You think you know how to develop a quarterback? Everybody thinks they know how to develop a quarterback. You're assuming that you're going into a program with a plan. I mean, I'm telling you, this is not a drill. There's a lot of people who have no idea what they're doing when they're tasked with coaching a quarterback or calling an offense. So, are you saying, just like we'd rank quarterbacks 1 to 32, do you rank offensive coordinators 1 to 32? Do you rank quarterback coaches 1 to 32? Well, what if you had the 32nd ranked coordinator in someone's mind, or the 32nd ranked quarterback coach? How is he getting a level of development that the guy who's first is getting? The NFL just froze mid-scroll because Tom Brady apparently went full detective mode and blasted Cleveland for sabotaging Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, you heard that right. Brady, the man who treats footballs like Fabergé eggs, just dropped a truth bomb that's got fans questioning if the Browns are running a franchise or a spy agency. Grab your popcorn, because if Brady's calling out sabotage, then something wild is brewing in Cleveland. And it's not just bad play calling. The local Cleveland media keep going relentless on Shad. He's entitled, distracted, developing slow, can't learn the playbook, not getting practice reps with the scout team, not getting practice reps at all. But what if I told you? And none of that got to do nothing with football. This goes deeper than people realize. If y'all ain't seen the Tom Brady segment that came out on Colin Cowherd, now this is pertaining to the Browns saying they're developing quarterbacks. The NFL wasn't ready for this one. Tom Brady, yes, the football monk of perfection, just turned into the league's unofficial accountability officer and pointed his laser focus straight at Cleveland, the same Cleveland that somehow manages to make headlines even when they're trying to stay quiet. This time it wasn't about a loss, a rebuild, or a quarterback carousel. I sat behind Drew, who was a franchise quarterback right in my second year. It's training camp, and we had a very good quarterback coach named Dick Raybane, and God rest his soul, unfortunately he passed away in training camp of a heart attack, and it was a very difficult loss for our team. And the way that we found a way to continue on that season is Bill Belichick became more of a quarterback coach than we ever imagined him being a quarterback coach. He was he was obviously a head coach, very involved in defensive game planning. Nope. It was about something juicier. Brady accused them of sabotaging Shedeur Sanders, and the league collectively choked on its Gatorade. Now, you'd think Tom Brady, the man who could lecture a tree on discipline, would be off in retirement sipping kale smoothies and pretending to enjoy yacht life. Y'all, it's either the Browns are actually developing Shedeur, which I told y'all before too. Their actions say otherwise, but Tom Brady is gonna break it down in how he got developed early on in his career, eventually leading him to 7 Super Bowls. So, if quarterbacks aren't getting developed anything similar to this, but apparently not even retirement can silence a man who sees nonsense from a mile away, and what he saw in Cleveland wasn't just incompetence, it was a full-blown organizational circus dressed up as a football program. According to Brady, the NFL has this weird double standard. Players get judged like contestants on a reality show every single second. Let's give them a chance. Let's give him a chance with the play calling. You know, you have an offensive line that isn't playing that well, so what do? Why not just play the short game so he can get the ball out of his hands very fast to run a competent goddamn offense? Outside of that, Shedeur has to be better in understanding that the offensive line that you're working with right now is not adequate. Why not allow the players that are competing for a job, in this instance Shedeur Sanders, to finish off the 2-minute drill? Every throw, every step, every misread scrutinized like it's national security. But the coaches? Oh, those guys get treated like untouchable wizards. They can run an offense straight into a ditch and somehow they're still labeled visionary. Brady wasn't having it. He basically said what everyone's been too scared to admit. Some of these coaches wouldn't know player development if it slapped them with a laminated playbook. And that's where Shedeur Sanders comes in. The kid who's been dissected more than a biology frog while his coaches skate off with no heat. Cleveland somehow managed to make his transition into the NFL look less like an opportunity and more like a carefully coordinated setup. Imagine being thrown into a new system where your coaches treat development like a myth, and then they turn around and question your readiness. It's like being asked to bake a cake with no flour, and then getting yelled at for serving air. That's Shedur's reality right now. And Brady wasn't going to let it slide. Cleveland's coaching staff has been walking around like none of this is their fault. They evaluate, they grade, they critique. But when you ask who actually worked with Shedeur, it's crickets. Not one coach willing to admit they actually invested time in the kid. But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders. And I'm going to tell you why I think he's being set up to fail. That's right. I'm going to say it. Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart, and then suddenly you throw him into the start lineup and he hasn't had any reps with the first team at all. Think about that. So you just gonna throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, you know, if he had first team snaps in practice, I don't say that. Apparently, the Browns' idea of development is handing a player a helmet and good luck wishes. Then when it all goes wrong, they shrug and say, see, he's not ready. Brady saw right through that nonsense. He knows talent when he sees it, and he also knows when a team's environment is toxic. The same man who turned unheralded receivers into legends can spot when coaching staffs are sleepwalking through their responsibilities. To him, Cleveland's problem isn't that Shedeur isn't ready. It's that they never bothered to make him ready, and that's where things start to get hilariously awkward, because when Brady speaks, people listen, especially the ones he just roasted. The Browns tried to spin it, of course, the usual PR fluff about competition, evaluation, and development, but those words ring hollow when your supposed developmental plan looks more like organized neglect. It's funny though. Coaches always love to preach accountability until it's time for them to be held accountable. He basically compared NFL coaching culture to a corporate office where the interns get fired for typos, while the managers get promoted for chaos. It's a broken cycle, and Shedeur just happened to be the latest casualty. You know, I always had this theory that quarterbacking should be easier now. You have personal coaching, 7-on-7 camps. I mean, guys like you and Drew Bledsoe and Troy Aikman have told me, like, I literally had, like, 8 high school games a year. You know, you're like, I had 40 starts, including high school. Well, guys now have 10,000 snaps by the time they're 14 years old. So I've always said as a sports commentator, I used to give guys 3 years. My argument now is Thanksgiving year 2, the GM, the coach, the coordinator need to go upstairs in a room privately, raise their hands yes or no, and I don't care where. The truth is, Cleveland's coaching inconsistency has been an open secret for years. One guy says they're developing a quarterback. Another says, we're evaluating. Another doesn't even remember his name. It's like every staff meeting has a different agenda, and none of them involve actually improving the player. Brady's point hit hard because everyone watching knows it's true. And just when you thought this story couldn't get messier, enter Stephen A. Smith, the man who turns outrage into performance art. The moment Brady's comments dropped, Stephen A. didn't just agree, he detonated. He's been warning everyone for months that Shedeur's situation smelled like sabotage. That's not opportunity, that's entrapment. It's like tossing someone the car keys during a tornado and saying, show us what you can do. You can't build rhythm, timing, or leadership when the only people you're practicing with are fighting for practice squad spots themselves. That call, he makes that call. Why? Because I want the last thing people to see is the mistakes and the sacks that happened and not give him a chance to redeem himself. Because I think probably what would have happened, okay, we can't have Shedeur come in here and finish this 2-minute drive and go down and get a touchdown. We don't want that. And in chat, for those of you who are listening and watching, I'm not making any excuses for him. He played bad. But I can tell you why he played bad. I mean, if you know the game of football and understand the game of football, understand that those that are in there with him during that time, I'm not going to be on. And to make things even spicier, Louis Riddick stepped in. You know, when Riddick joins a conversation, things are about to get analytical and uncomfortable. He didn't sugarcoat anything either. He agreed Shedeur has potential, but he ripped into the Browns' so-called plan. According to Riddick, the reps weren't there, the structure wasn't there, and the intent wasn't there. In other words, the whole thing was a farce. He said what fans were thinking. This wasn't development, it was delayed. Riddick even took it a step further. He pointed out that other young quarterbacks were getting consistent reps, coaching, and patience. Shedeur, he was left to figure things out on his own in a playbook that felt more like a puzzle. It's impossible to perform when you're the only one who doesn't know the full rhythm of the offense. Every snap becomes a high-stakes audition. Not one person. The silence said it all. If no one in leadership actually advocated for him, that means he's essentially an orphan within the organization. No one fighting for him, no one guiding him, and no one accountable for his success. That's a recipe for career disaster. And then came the cherry on top. The moment that made this whole saga look like something out of a football soap opera. Why is the third quarterback getting interviewed? He had nothing to do with the game. Okay, it's all for PR, and he's a heck of a personality, but the personality can't come out until you do something on the field, and it's a big week for Dylan Gabriel, and a big week for the Browns. I mean, making that transition for him even be available to the press. I don't know why he's doing it. You tell me, you know how that works. Is that the front office? Is that the comms team? Like, who's putting him out? So we're saying it's not really on him. We have to protect him. He's a young player. Yep. Why are we making him available? Exactly. To me, I mean, there's no sense to have him available. Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner, casually admitted he had no clue about Shedeur's signing. None. He basically said he left that decision entirely to the coaching staff. Now, how does an owner not know about his own quarterback being brought in? That's not management. That's negligence in a suit. Brady's comments suddenly made a lot more sense. How can a player thrive when the people running the show don't even know who's running the show? Haslam's confession was like someone saying, "Oh, we adopted a kid. Cool. Hope he's doing well." That's not how you build an NFL franchise. That's how you build chaos. And if you think Stephen A was heated before, wait until he heard that. He unleashed like a storm. He said what everyone was too polite to admit. Haslam's "I didn't know" wasn't an accident. It was strategy. The perfect way to distance yourself from accountability while pretending you're not our guy. And just like that, another young quarterback's story gets rewritten before it even begins. Brady's explosion suddenly looked less like a rant and more like a revelation. He wasn't just defending Shedeur, he was defending every young quarterback chewed up by systems like this. He get thrown in there with the wool, cause the real wolves come during the season. Pittsburgh is coming. Baltimore is coming. The real wolves is coming. Now, I am praying to God that Shedeur gets an opportunity to show what he can really do, and I think that would be probably the best thing for him, but knowing the Cleveland Browns, they dumbass going to trade him. The league is full of coaches recycling the same excuses, pretending to evaluate talent while never putting that talent in a position to thrive. Shedeur just became the perfect example of how broken that formula really is. And the irony of all this, Brady himself was once in Shedeur's shoes, drafted low, underestimated, barely given reps. The difference is he had a coach in Bill Belichick who, despite his own quirks, actually believed in developing players. If Brady hadn't been given that chance, maybe the world never would have seen the GOAT. That's exactly why his words sting so much. He's living proof that development matters, and he knows when a player's being robbed of it. A culture where players get blamed for everything, and coaches hide behind buzzwords. He called out the absurdity of letting underqualified coaches dictate who deserves opportunity. The whole thing feels less like a meritocracy, and more like an ego competition with headsets. I've heard ex-players talk about Shedeur. I've heard ex-NFL coaches. I've heard media members, meaning like beat reporters. I've heard fans talk about Shedeur, and it's funny, I was on with my buddy Bill Ryder today, and I, declared myself as Switzerland, and he's like, "Wow, it sounds like you're more like," maybe I can't remember what he said, but basically that more positive about Shedeur than not. And I was like, well, I think some of my positivity is I look at the kid and I go, skill set wise, I think he has what it takes to be anywhere from the 13th best starting quarterback in the NFL. And you know what's even funnier? Cleveland's coaches actually thought they could quietly sideline Shedeur without anyone noticing, as if the football world isn't watching every snap, every depth chart shuffle, every little move. Then Brady opened his mouth and suddenly their strategy looked less like management and more like a cover-up. It's almost poetic. Brady, the man who thrived under structure, now calling out the system that refuses to build it. He's like the retired professor who comes back to school and realizes the students are still being taught the same outdated nonsense he fought to fix 20 years ago. Except this time, the stakes are millions of dollars in one young quarterback's career. And let's not pretend Shedeur is just some random prospect. The kid's got pedigree, talent, and swagger. He's not just playing the game. The The Browns coaching staff will probably survive this. They'll have press conferences, talk about adjustments, throw around words like growth and learning curve. Listen, that's what you ask for. You know, that's what you ask for within the game. If I could go back and do anything, I mean, it's always everything in life if you had that chance, but we don't have the luxury to travel back in time. As a kid, I want to go back and do things differently. So overall, of course, you know, you wish you can, but in the battle of the moment, in the heat of the battle, you know, you want to be that outfit, you want to be that dog, you want to be out there in that final 2-minute drive. So, you know, of course, small things of course frustrate, but that's what happens, you know, when you want a player to be able to, Meanwhile, Shedeur will be left to rebuild his confidence while the same coaches keep collecting paychecks. Accountability non-existent. Brady's message cut through the noise. If you're going to judge players like professionals, then hold coaches to the same standard. Don't just praise them for showing up to work in team gear. Judge them on results, on how well they actually prepare their players. Because at the end of the day, a quarterback's success is as much about environment as it is about skill. The ripple effect of Brady's comments has already started. Analysts, fans, even former players are calling out the hypocrisy. How is it that players can lose their jobs over one bad game, but coaches can ruin multiple careers and still get extensions? The imbalance is ridiculous, and Brady just gave it the spotlight it needed. So when Tom Brady speaks up, it's not just gossip, it's a warning shot. He's saying what players have whispered for years. Coaching is the NFL's biggest unmeasured variable. You can have all the talent in the world, but if your staff doesn't believe in you, you're doomed before you even take a snap. Now, he's got to put in the work. He's got to adapt to the NFL. He's got to adapt to not being coached by his dad. But physically, when I'm a physical talent, the concerns I have about Dillon Gabriel aren't there with Shedeur. Now, I would not have taken him with a number 2 pick under any circumstances. I might have thought about it at 33 or 35. I definitely would have thought about it at 92 over Dillon Gabriel, but the truth is, like, I don't feel beholden to either of these quarterbacks. Like, we should treat them like scratch-off lottery tickets until proven otherwise. But I'm watching the discourse fall out with Shedeur Sanders. In the latest one's pantomiming, but certainly the one before this was him saying that he feels like he could do better than a lot of the starting quarterback stuff you see around the NFL, and that he's confident he'll be ready to go when his number is called. And honestly, if Brady hadn't said something, this story might have just disappeared into the offseason fog. But now, everyone's watching. Cleveland's every move with Shedeur will be under a microscope. Every rep, every quote, every decision, they're officially on trial. Because when the GOAT calls you out, you don't just brush it off. It's funny how poetic this whole thing is. It's about a league that still hasn't learned how to protect its future. A system where politics outweigh progress, where loyalty trumps logic. Maybe it's time the NFL stopped pretending this is just about competition. Maybe it's time to admit that sometimes the real game isn't played on the field. It's played behind closed doors, where careers get decided long before the first whistle blows. And until that game changes, Tom Brady's words are going to echo across every locker room. If coaches can't build their players, maybe it's time we start rebuilding the coaches.